Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Naked Chapel, the opportunity to gather together in a little bit of a project where we rethink about the various elements that make up church. So not just the things that we're used to, but things from wider society where we can go, oh, I wonder if we could take a pinch of that and a little tweak of this. How would our church benefit, be better for it, to help us focus on God? So tonight we are joined by some familiar faces and some different faces. And so I would like to first of all welcome to some familiar faces, to Rach and to Elliot. How are you both doing this evening?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Fantastic.
Well, yeah.
Jolly good. And we're also being joined by some different faces as well. I was about to say strange faces, and I thought
that's not a good idea.
Especially as one of those is my wife. So yeah, good evening to Liz and also to Becki. So Becki will be on tech tonight, and we'll be bringing comments from yourselves in the. I was about to say in the Twitter sphere, but we're not on. Well, we could be on Twitter, maybe, but Becki's not on that. And on Facebook and on YouTube, comment. So please join in that way. And good evening, Liz, as well. Hello. So we have some various bits and pieces. Does anybody have anything to share before we begin? I take that as a no. So I think we can just launch straight in. And this week I'm going to start off with Elliot. So Elliot, would you like to explain to us about your first element of feast sofas?
Yes, so maybe quite an obvious one, but I was thinking about what would I change in a church, and I think my thoughts came to seating. Of course, many churches have been kind of going in this direction a little bit, with removing pews and putting in chairs and things like that, often for practicality. But I'd love to see us go several steps further and really personalize what seating is available so that people feel really comfy and at home. For me, I would love sofas, but I was considering maybe a variety of seating would be appropriate. That could include bean bags, normal chairs, pews maybe, and sofas, whatever people would like. There's a whole range of things for people to kind of sit back and worship in an environment that was kind of suitable to them. I'd enjoy being comfy in a church, but maybe other people would prefer to I don't know, not recline. Maybe a deck chair or a sunbed is maybe not quite suitable.
Yeah, that's cool. That sounds good. So kind of going for more of the informal rather than the kind of formal approach. And just for those who didn't know, last time we met, Elliot suggested about sleep cams or kiss cams. So going from one extreme to the other of keeping people on their feet and alert at all times to being quite comfortable and laid back, and for people to be, I guess, comfortable with their surroundings, aren't they, really? How often do we have to sit in wooden pews elsewhere? Not sure, really. But that bit, I believe Wesley said about not making seating too comfortable because he wanted us out there witnessing to the world rather than getting comfortable in church. So it's quite self-explanatory, really, isn't it? The comfy sofas. Does anybody have anything else to comment regarding that? Regarding that?
Yeah. I have to take my shoes off though. If having comfy sofas, I want my shoes off and curling up on it. Is that part of the deal?
I think we could push to allowing people to take their shoes off.
Sounds good to me.
I've got one of those sofas where you pull the lever and the foot bit comes up. I think I could quite go with one of those, but the trouble is I might just
nod. So you're suggesting recliners?
Yeah. I could have done with a recliner on Saturday at our meeting. We were on pews for quite a significant part of the day, and I began to notice them by the end of it.
Okay. Is there anything else to add? Anybody at home who've got anything to add about these lovely ideas about comfy sofas? So far, we've just got a couple of comments. In fact, it's just Angela saying good evening. Good evening, Angela. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Shall we move on to our next topic, which I'm going to throw Rach into the deep end. And I'm a bit intrigued by this one because, Rach, you have shared with me a road. Oh, just before we go on. Angela is actually joining us watching on a curled up on a sofa with my shoes off already. But I've given Rach a little bit of heads up for a roadmap atlas.
Yeah,
So
well, I
think
I probably missed something somewhere because the intro says about how you would change church, and I think this is more of a tool to help me change church.
Okay, go for it.
So I was kind of thinking about it. I like looking at maps, and I like working out different routes and seeing new places and place names and all of that kind of thing. And I like it when you see old landmarks and that kind of thing, and you get the contours, particularly looking at an OS map. So for me, there was a sense of choosing a book of road maps to try and help us as we navigate our way at the moment through these post-COVID times, and we're not kind of sure of the destination maybe, and wherever you start, there are many places that you can go to, aren't there? There's not one fixed destination. So I quite like the idea of bringing my atlas into the chapel so that we could work out something of where we might go.
So would that be something of a sermon illustration, or are you wanting to kind of map out the church and the kind of almost the history of it, or the kind of possible directions of where the church could go?
I think probably, knowing me, it would be some of the directions in which the church might go, but I would definitely need more pairs of eyes and greater wisdom. I might enjoy maps, but the one thing I'm really, really bad at is working out, when I've got a map in front of me, I might know where I am, but working out which is north, south, east and west, I'm rubbish. So I can look at a map, but I need somebody else to tell me, well, if you go that way, you're going south, but if you go that way, you're going north, when I might have thought north was over there or something.
So some help to orientate yourself.
That's the word.
Yeah,
That's
sounds
the word. Yes.
I was just trying to work out whether you'd be quite kind of casual with this, or whether you'd like to say, well, the contours, the shady areas are down this way, and the shady folk are that way. The uphill struggles are.
Somebody who rides a bike, I prefer the contours close together when I'm going downhill. And sometimes when you're on a bike, you can see this steep road in front of you, but actually once you get there, it's nowhere near as steep as you think it's going to be. So looking at the map and working out the contours, I might need somebody to say, that looks uphill, Rach, but that's okay.
Sorry, my camera just switched up for a second.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, I need other people to help discover those routes as well. And what you could do is you could go off in different directions and then come back together again.
Does anybody have anything to add to Rachel's suggestion of a roadmap atlas, or anybody at home? Is anybody watching with a roadmap atlas? Oh, no, wait.
Is it curled up on your lap, Angela?
How freaky would that be?
I was just considering that I mostly use kind of Google Maps these days rather than a kind of physical map, and how it often will self-align to where you're going or to north, depending on what you want. I'm not quite sure how that plays into things, but it's just what I was thinking of just then.
I think the thing I like about I'm very much a digital person, but I like the paper map idea because you can spread it out more and kind of see around it. And sometimes when you go bigger on the Google map, it actually gets less detail close to where you are. So that was my thinking behind the paper map.
I'm still intrigued by how you're going to be careful of labelling hazards. But like that in some respects for like people who are new to church, because this Sunday we did a baptism service, and I find that it's very much kind of user friendly and trying to explain what happens next, and this is the part of the service where we do this and that the other, and so having kind of proper guidance and that kind of helping like a key to help.
I was going to say it's a bit like having a key, isn't it, on the map?
Yeah, but sometimes that means having to name.
Let's not get too complicated.
Bits and not of the other bits. Anyway, yes. Shall we move on, or has anyone else got anything to comment or otherwise?
Thanks, Angela, for putting that you haven't got the map.
Very good. Okay, let's move on to our next idea. And this time we're going to do Becki, and this is going to be for the first time in our kind of conversation about adding a person from wider society. And so, Becki, there is your suggestion is Grace Petrie.
Yeah, I want Grace Petrie to lead my worship. So Grace Petrie is, well, she's about my age, which maybe that's part of why she resonates so much with me, and maybe that's also part of, leading in a church where not many people fit into my age bracket. But I think Grace Petrie, she's a folk singer, but she's really overtly political. And I think as I was thinking about this, it was kind of knee-jerk to say, who do I want to lead my singing? Grace Petrie is my immediate option, but I've been wondering why that is. I mean, partly I really like the fact that she's overtly political, and I kind of wish that the church could be a little bit more, not necessarily party political, but political in talking about some of the really big issues that we're facing, and she does that really well. But also, I realised that as I was thinking about Grace Petrie leading worship, I realised what it was. I like some hymns, I like some modern worship songs, and I like that we can sing hymns in a rousing kind of way, and we can sing some modern worship songs in a passionate kind of way. But there's not many that I shout with all my gut. And I think some of Grace Petrie songs I really shout with every bit of me. And I kind of think this is a bit about Grace Petrie because I think she's a great musician, and I think the way she brings politics into song is really amazing. But I also think I want songs that I shout with all my gut, that everybody does. And I'm sort of thinking about, I was really pleased to see her recently in a social club in Leeds. And I'm like, yes, this is the kind of feel that I want for church. I want us to be those people who come together and we shout it with all our gut, the thing that we believe in, and we're happy, comfy with a pint of soft or other drink. And there's something about the way that people can agree in song over politics, simple things. I do realise that she's got quite a lot of coarse language, so she's not possibly the best choice for an all-age service.
Yes, it's fair to say. Yeah, it's fair to say. Yeah, thank you for this. And I guess that kind of hits a few ideas, a few kind of areas, doesn't it, about people who represent yourself, so kind of a similar age group, somebody who is very kind of political, and kind of not kind of, dare I say, on the fence. I think sometimes when we're in church, we feel as if we don't want to push the congregation in a certain direction, but kind of remain on the fence. But then kind of sometimes is it just about going all out and kind of trying to right injustices? That's very kind of Methodist, very Wesleyan, isn't it? So yeah, I get that, and yeah, she is a bit sweary at times.
She is a bit sweary. Sometimes I think some people would argue that sometimes you kind of just have to be a bit sweary. Now, I don't think that's necessarily true in church because it's not to everybody's liking, but I think it's a bit about her passion. But the thing, I don't know. The thing is exactly about not being on the fence, Mark. It's that she's become much more clear. I think as you sort of look at some of her older works and some of the newer ones, she's got to the point where she's going, it's no point me being on the fence about these things even slightly, because there are things that really need addressing. And I think probably as church we need to catch up to that. And I want to talk about things that I want to see stopped or started. I think I want us to be less on the fence about things and be more direct. And it's so Wesleyan, isn't it? It's so within our tradition to learn through song as well. And that's the other thing is, that sort of those catchy things that you're going to take away with you. We have that in hymns, we have that in modern songs. I dare to say we have more of it in popular music. The things that stick in your head, be it from Encanto or the latest pop group or whatever, those are the things that stick in your head a bit more than the music that you've sung on a Sunday, probably because it's sung with more passion in lots of places, and also because it does sort of get to the point. And I want us to get to the point, because if we're learning our theology from our singing, maybe the time is that we talk about preparing for a rainy day, don't we? Or at some point we'll be bolder about, right, the time is short, crack on peeps. So I just think we should get on with being a bit bolder.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. Is there any comments from home? Is there any comments about Grace Petrie? I was going to say, I think one of the ones that we sing most in our household is "There's a Storm Here to Weather." So that's quite a good one. Angela has put yes to more passion in church. Yeah, I think there is something there, isn't there, about sometimes some hymns. I'm not going to hopefully not going to get too political on this or got shouted at through social media about. There are some hymns that you may need a bit of a translator sometimes. You're grown up singing them and you're happy, confident singing them, but if you stop and kind of go, what exactly am I singing? And sometimes why are these words like they are? And I think they're obviously kind of so grounded in the context of history, of kind of traditions, that we're kind of so busy singing them because they have been a part of our life, part of our pivotal moments, weddings, funerals, baptism, etc. But then sometimes you go, well, what actually am I singing? And then we get into the whole debate of choruses about being too personalised sometimes, and that can also kind of rock the boat a bit. Yeah, what do others think about Grace Petrie as our worship leader? At this in the Naked Chapel.
Becki, you got me into Grace Petrie, and there's one song I remember where. I can't remember its title at the moment, but she leaves Glastonbury, I think it is, in order to get to, is it a niece's?
Her niece.
First. Yeah, that's right. But there was that sense of nothing was more important than this, and that reminded me a little bit of Corey Asbury's song about God chases us down, and there's nowhere that He won't go for us. But I also really liked your comment that we haven't got time to hang around. Sometimes these messages have got to be said, and it is really difficult. How do you hold the balance between recognizing that we're running out of time, but also presenting it in a way that we can take as many people with us as possible? But we haven't got time to lose, have we? It's got to be said.
Anybody else? Before we move on, and I think one comment about kind of modern musicians and things is often we can reflect on them being quite prophetical and kind of being prophets, bringing in these kind of sometimes contrasting voices, and I think that's quite a strong thing as well. With sometimes musicians, artists can really kind of bring in kind of this change of direction or really kind of challenging views, but if it's in a catchy song and a catchy tune, it's much easier to hear than if maybe someone's shouting at you on the street.
I think that's right, but it's interesting because Grace Petrie is not a Christian. She's very well aware it's got a big Christian following, and she's all right with that, but she's not a Christian person. But I have no trouble calling her a prophet because she's speaking truth and she's speaking it to power. And I sort of think there's probably another little thing which we won't have time for tonight, which is about listening to the other voices and acknowledging that we don't own God and the way that God works and moves in the world. So there's probably that extra little bit for me, but that feels like a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
All I would say is that I would hope that maybe the Naked Chapel is about that, which is why we're talking about getting things from wider society. So I would like to hopefully own that one. Shall we move on? So I'm going to move on to Elliot again, and this time we are going to be talking about. So maybe Grace Petrie has been our worship leader. It is about TED Talks.
Yes. So I was thinking about who would I want to come and preach or talk a service, and actually I was thinking that rather than a named celebrity, actually what I would be more interested in seeing is actually someone maybe who I don't actually know, but comes to speak on a specialist topic, something that they're really knowledgeable about. And I think sometimes we can, I don't know, recently I've seen the kind of phrase TED Talks used quite kind of almost in a derogatory way, kind of like a very short, concise talk that doesn't go in depth. But actually I see the value in the opposite, being that it's, yes, it's short, but it really enlightens you to a topic you might not have known anything about before, from a specialist person that's their area of expertise and is able to bring a reasoned argument with lots of research and things like that. So I could name a few of my favorites, but I think actually the value of what I'm trying to bring here is that it's about exposing us to a wider variety of things, points of view, information, interesting topics from people we might not have heard of before. And I suppose also about learning. I feel like what really interests me is, listening to something that would stimulate questions and something that I've not known before. And maybe these are all things that I don't feel I often get from the typical sermon in a church. And it's, I kind of want to shoehorn them in somehow.
Can I just ask for clarity? Is it the framework of a TED Talk, of it being quite short and concise, or is it that actually you want like people from wider spheres, not necessarily kind of like preachers, for example, not just necessarily about Christian themes, but about kind of broader themes that we could maybe dissect or ponder about theologically? Do you know what I mean? Is it a bit of both,
yeah.
or is it
Yes, I think for me it is a bit of both. It's about inviting people from wider society to come talk about their specialty, whether they're Christians or not, and whether it's a Christian topic or not, and not just listening to kind of the same voices from within our same circle, but also the format and the kind of the short presentation and the all that comes with it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add into this, or anybody at home like to comment about a TED Talk?
Elliot, I wanted you to finish that by saying, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk. But you know what I really liked about it, as I thought, oh, come on, Elliot, that's a great choice, a great chance to say thank you for coming to my TED Talk, is that it's so much about passion, isn't it? It's not just people that are so expert.
Yeah.
Like, they're expert for a reason. They've given so much of their time and their energy to it. And I think as preachers, it's quite hard to give your time and energy to every single passage, every single week. So getting somebody who's knowledgeable about a particular thing, it sings for you more, doesn't it? I still remember the feeling I had, not the words. I still remember the feeling I had when a vicar in the Church of England I grew up in, a visiting vicar, was speaking about creation, but he was an astrophysicist by training, and then became a minister later in life. And so he could talk about all the stars and how they're formed, and it was just mind-boggling. And those of you who've heard David Wilkinson talk, it's a similar thing. You know, people who've got such in-depth knowledge about these things, and they're so passionate about it. And I remember how stirred I couldn't tell you any of the words he said. That doesn't matter. I remember how it made me feel, and how it made me feel about God and about this person who follows God and the way that they do. And it changed me because of, you know, his passion for it. So I'm very in favour of the TED Talk thing. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Any more comments? Or should we move on? I think that quiet will move on. And Liz, you've been really patient so far. I'm going to bring you in to your kind of suggestion, which kind of, dare I say, kind of turns things on their heads a little bit. So your kind of comment is about in community, and I think we would be in agreement with you, but would you like to explain a little bit more?
I just think that church, I know most of that are part of the community, and we do all our good works and all the rest of it, and have things going on in our churches and abroad, which is great. General Jew public doesn't really know about all that stuff. It tends to be in-house on the whole. I just think the place that we should be is actually in the community, perhaps in a local community centre. I would love to see like some sort of cafe on local high streets, run by the churches, where people can come and have their coffee Sunday morning. We can have worship, we can have live bands. We can there's lots of people in our community that can play and sing and do all sorts of things and write poems and stuff, but we don't use them. We need to find out about these people. They're the ones that we've been placed with in the communities where we live, and the only place to find out is to go meet them where they are, like that.
So not just kind of individuals in society, but also actually the whole kind of community, the celebration being brought out of our four walls and into the community, into the marketplace. And I think that's really good, and I think that's a really strong argument. I often think that we could actually, and even just last time, we were talking about kind of a coffee shop, kind of church, and kind of having proper coffee, and I guess there's that element of being open. And part of my ministry, or a lot of my ministry, is telling people to be able to communicate outside of our four walls, tell people what's going outside of, and be present in the big events and community, in the festivals and bits and pieces, what draws people out onto the streets and otherwise. So thank you for that, Liz. So for the church to be more in community. Is there comments either at home or with ourselves?
I think it's right. I often hear people in church saying, how do we get people in? And I just want to say, how do we go out? Yeah. Because we live most of our life outside of the church building, and God isn't just present when we're inside the church. For us, He's there 24/7, and to go out and be in the community, I agree with Liz, is really important.
Yeah. I think the saddest thing I ever knew was a couple of people who went to the jobs in an office Monday to Friday, but the people within their offices never knew that they went to church. They never knew they were Christian. It was like two separate lives. I found that very sad.
Yeah.
And Angela said here that Jesus did tell us to go, didn't He? Go into the world and beyond. And dare I say, we sometimes get a bit comfortable in our churches, but that shouldn't kind of be dismissive of comfy sofas as well.
No, not at all.
Then also Paul, tech from last time, he said, "Yeah, you had me at good coffee." Absolutely. I think that, again, isn't it? So it's something about kind of reaching out beyond our own comfort zones, but also trying to be authentic, be genuine, be present, be visible in our communities, and so often when everything else feels as if it's changing around us, we can kind of maybe feel comfortable at the sameness of what church can sometimes be, but actually I think it can be more exciting. Yes, definitely more messy being involved in community, but I think that's when, dare I say, God shakes things up a lot more, when we're kind of wading through stuff, and it gets exciting, a bit scary at times, but kind of you get a sense of God really being at work around you. Should we move on? We've got one here from Rach. People are just commenting just at the moment of where I move on to the next subject. Paul said,
one.
Pardon?
Is it my Jurgen Klopp?
Well, I wasn't going to mention that one just yet, but I can if you like. So it says, Paul says, Jesus drank wine, went to parties and spoke to people he wasn't supposed to. We very rarely do the same. Very nice. Yeah, go on then. Rach, I'll tell you what, let's go with your Jurgen Klopp one, shall we? Oh, Liz is just...
Well, I was just thinking while Becki was saying that we don't have a monopoly on music in the church, and we don't have a monopoly on leadership either. So rather than having a TED talk, I'd really like to get Jurgen Klopp.
Okay, can we just, for those non-football fans, did he used to manage Liverpool, or does he still manage Liverpool?
He used to. He still manages Liverpool, and he's the one who's brought around a real change of culture within the whole of the Liverpool football community. And it was 30 years. So it was 1990 that they last won what is now the Premiership. And it took 30 years, but Jurgen Klopp has just completely changed the mindset. And I really admire his style as a manager, and I would love to learn from him and to hear how he's done that at Liverpool. What I see from him when he's on the pitch side or when he's talking afterwards is there is such a passion for the game and for his team. And I think sometimes we've lost that passion for Jesus. Angela earlier said, more passion. He's somehow managed to connect all of the people, and you see it when he's on the sidelines, when a player is substituted. He's there embracing the player when they come off, sharing his vision with them before new players come on. And if he brings on the younger players as well, so he's given them a key place within the team. And he goes with people. It was in the, I think it was the Caribou Cup, where he played his second goalkeeper all the way through, but he didn't lose faith in that second goalkeeper. Even in the big game, he didn't put his first goalkeeper on, and it went to a penalty shootout, and all 11 players on the other team had taken a penalty. All 10 players. All other 10 players on Liverpool had taken a penalty, and it was left to the two goalkeepers, and he's still stuck with his goalie who scored. And there's something about that faith in all of us and about us being the team together. And I just really admire the way Jurgen's done that. And if he could come and share some of that with the church, and if he did it in community, and if he let me go to Anfield, then that would be a bigger bonus as well.
I should at this point say
there are other football teams available.
I did notice though that when I googled kind of Jurgen, that I did see on Wikipedia it said that he is considered to be the best manager of his time. I was thinking, I wonder if a Liverpoolian fan had actually updated that Wikipedia page.
Could well be. There are other very good managers around, but I really like the sense of community that he's generated and the family feel.
And it's quite interesting actually, because as Angela was pointed out as well, she said more passion. Oh yes, we mentioned that passion word 3 times tonight. And so there is something there, isn't there? We're wanting those people kind of on fire, those people kind of really just kind of burning for stuff, and you kind of see that glint in their eye, and the way that they can share it with others. And sometimes I think we have people who are really passionate, but maybe are lacking that communication element to those around us. Is there any other comments to make, folks, about Jurgen Klopp? Would it be kind of a leadership role, or is he kind of steward at the back? Where do you kind of place him, Rach?
Well, there's something about how he develops self-belief within the players. I think I would want him, I'd probably want him to be flexible, to be sometimes at the front, sometimes I think he'd be making the coffee and just chatting to people. Maybe he'd be reclining on the sofa. Who knows? Yeah.
Very good. Any other comments? Any other football fans?
I mean, do you know what I like then, Rach, is that you're right, you pay so much attention to the individuals. And I always sort of say, like, once we've lost sight of the individuals because we need roles filling, we've stopped being church. And I just think that attention to the individual and to spurring them on. And I think you're right that he'd be flexible, because I think that's something he demonstrates. I don't know a huge amount about football management. I mean, very little indeed, but something about, you do see it in that sort of inspiration that he offers. And I think he probably would sometimes be on the sofa sort of saying, you know, come on, tell me what's going on. And then another time there would be like a rousing pep talk. I think that's quite a good, interesting figure to sort of say, we want these variety of skills, because it's all essentially still about the individual at the heart of it, and making sure that those individuals can then work well together.
And if I turned up in my trainers, as unfit as I am, I'm sure that Klopp would be able to make a footballer out of me. And there's something in that inspiration and passion, isn't there, that we sometimes miss in the church too.
Thank you, Rach. Thank you for bringing Jurgen Klopp to our congregation.
Can I come next to him, please?
I'm going to kind of put Elliot on the spot and ask him about his last offering, and it is in-person breakout room. Do you want to explain this a little bit?
Yes. So I was thinking about something we could take from what many of us have been doing in the online space, and Zoom breakout rooms are often used quite successfully to kind of facilitate discussion in meetings or services and things. I'm sure you've experienced this, and I thought, how could we incorporate that into a kind of physical space? And I really like the idea of having a bit more engagement and trying to have some in-person breakout rooms during a church service, and maybe kind of after the sermon or after the TED talk or whatever it might be, having an opportunity to kind of break out into small discussion groups and actually have some dedicated time to kind of discuss things, not just like turn to your neighbor, you've got 30 seconds, which always kind of terrifies me when that happens. But I don't know, practically, ideally, it would be good if, you know, the person at the front could press a button and everyone would magically shoot off into a soundproofed room somewhere with a random selected group of people.
I was about to ask whether you're going to be manually allocating people or allowing them to randomly allocate, because I think that could be an issue in itself. But it randomly would be good, wouldn't it? Just to kind of move away into a group.
Again, it's can be a bit intimidating, but I think it is one of the kind of advantages of being able to meet new people and experience different views, who, you know, people you might not normally talk to, or have an opportunity to have a discussion on a topic. I think it's good.
Yeah. Any comments at home, or any comments from our other guests?
Between you, can we have a little label as well that's got our name in it, so that it's easy to remember the names?
Oh, hallelujah. Yeah. Becoming a minister of a location where we were starting off on COVID and with Zoom names, and then going into a building when everyone's masked up, it was really difficult trying to identify anybody. So yes, to the name identifiers would be really good. But yeah, anyone else? Oh. Rach, next time. Anything else to add about in-person breakout rooms?
Angela's got a good comment that I'll pop up, which is, would everyone just look at each other like they do on Zoom? It's true for the first few seconds, isn't it? Then you have to find the person in the group who will like curate it and sort of go, so what do we think about this? So you're going to have to trust some of those as well. Paul's got an additional comment as well. Yeah.
We all had the mute buttons as well. Also, practicality-wise, would you also have like the countdown going? And so, like, I've got 60 seconds left now, just through my last little point before suddenly I get cut. You're now relocated into the main church. Very good.
I was taking a memorial service the other day, and we'd got people sharing stories and talking, and I tried to call them back from the front, and there was this little group of men who were still talking with each other, which was lovely. And in the end, the only way I got their attention was by shouting last orders. You need something like that, don't you, with your breakout rooms, where then they would just come back together.
I think you sometimes need that with just sharing the peace as well. When you do that.
Last orders.
Okay, let's move on, and I'm going to actually come straight back to you and ask you about your last choice of bank holiday. What do you want to? Is this maybe on your mind at the moment for any particular reason?
Again, I think I was thinking more about how we might do church rather than what we might bring to the church, and I think the bank holiday gives us a time for stopping. Not everybody, of course, but largely. And I think there's often a sense of anticipation about a bank holiday, isn't there? There's that growing excitement that you've got this extra day to do things on or in. And I like that sense of anticipation. If you could bring that to worship, would be really good. And the family time that it offers. So that for me was the thinking behind the bank holiday, that it's a time to stop, to rest. Sometimes it's an opportunity to gather with other people. But I think I like the idea of anticipation, that it's going to be something different and good. Unless you're thinking about the weather on a bank holiday, and then you might not have the same anticipation.
Yeah, there's something, isn't there, about kind of intended breaks and stopping. I believe it was is it Newcastle District that you talked about the kind of the mission Sunday, where they would tell everybody to stop. I don't know if it was just a one-off thing or if it was an ongoing thing, but where they sort of said, actually, this one Sunday in the year, there's going to be no morning services, and you're going to just go out and be rather than busy do. To that effect, I can't remember. But yeah, I get that. Quite,
and we all need to rest, don't we? I don't know who it was earlier. I think you said we can sometimes get so busy doing church that actually we need to rest.
And that ties in with Lucy's comment about going community as well, can't we? That if we are purposely stepping away from church on Sunday in the year, just to kind of say, actually, let's be, let's go and have a party in the park, listen to Grace Petrie, or go along to the football match instead, and not watch Liverpool, or watch Liverpool, or just to have a lie in and have a cooked breakfast or whatever you might do later on in the day. Angela's, but are meant to rest. Yeah. Because I think that's it, isn't it? We can actually get so carried away doing, we can forget about the rest and God's intention for us to have a day of rest a week. And maybe we should, with our big church calendar of events, of lectionary, of this, how often do we just sort of say, let's have an off day? Let's just kind of, let's give the organist and the stewards a week off and just.
I think
just
sometimes in church we forget what it is to rest, because sometimes we can find our identity in the things that we do that keep us busy as well, and creating that intentional rest is something that as leaders we need to do. We need to give permission to rest, and I think for me that's spoken to me over the last couple of years, that God doesn't value me any less if I'm not busy. And taking time to rest is really important.
Is there anybody else, any more comments to make before we go on to our last one? Okay, Becki, I'm going to call you up and we'll let you to introduce John Cooper Clarke. Does everybody know who he is? Do you need to explain?
I'll explain. I don't mind. But let me first say I'm still annoyed with myself in a way, because I absolutely resent and resist with every fibre of my being the idea of celebrity in church. However, I've picked a couple of celebrities. So John Cooper Clarke is a poet, but he's a punk poet, and he sort of really rose to fame in the 1970s and 1980s. He's 73 now. I love poetry. I absolutely love poetry, and maybe this is a little bit like choosing some sort of inspiration from popular music as well. Is that poetry often does in far fewer words, with much more memorable taglines, what any amount of prose can do. And I love poetry, and I like using poetry in worship. I like it as liturgy. I think there's something really creative and interesting you can do when you try to be brief rather than loquacious. But what I like about John Cooper Clarke is that he feels fresh. I mean, he's 73 and it still feels like his poetry is subversive. He uses really plain speaking, and he uses that, I think, as quite a challenge to some of the flowery kind of poetry that's sometimes grown up. And I think I remember sort of learning about Cooper Clarke when I was a teenager, and actually I was introduced to it through the most inspiring way, which was the GCSE English Literature, Poetry, Anthology. But I wanted to know more about him, so I learned more about him, and then amazingly we had the opportunity to go and see him perform live, because he's very much a performance poet. And I remember just being absolutely blown away. He still looks like an old rocker. He embodies it. And I remember things like his haiku, which goes very simply and quickly, and let's pray copyright would allow it. He simply says, to convey one's mood in 17 syllables is very difficult. And I was just blown away. And it's kind of like that is indicative of his whole genre, I suppose, which is trying to subvert the norms of poetry a little bit, trying to speak through it. There's maybe a bit of that sense of wanting a voice that's really strong. I've picked another non-Christian person who's a bit sweary at times. Don't start googling names of John Cooper Clarke poetry in your sort of really thick-skinned.
I was going to say the one I'm aware of is the "I Want to Be Yours," isn't it?
I want to be yours. Yeah.
I want to be your vacuum cleaner, breathing in your dust. I want to be your Ford Cortina. I will never rust. If you like your coffee pot, let me be your coffee pot. You call the shots. I want to be yours. That's the first verse. Online.
Yeah, that's one of his love poems, and it's just so beautiful. Like, I'd much rather somebody said, Mark's my husband, but anybody who wants to profoundly express love for me, I'd much rather they said something that I could really understand. I want to be your vacuum cleaner, picking up your dust. I know what that means. And much as we could go through, the realms of Summercoin Mistress or whatever else we want to explore in terms of the poetry world, let's be straight talking together. And I love that. But there's something else about John Cooper Clarke too. He's 73, he's still touring, and last year he revealed that he has an Alzheimer's diagnosis. And so there's something else for me here, which is that he's embodying something I want to see more of in our church, is that a little bit like Rach was saying with Jurgen Klopp, that everybody has something that is really valuable. And I'm not suggesting we ask all our folk that have received a diagnosis of Alzheimer's to sort of, deliver poetry from the front, but there's something about sort of saying what he's got is still valuable. And there are cracks appearing, there are sort of comments occasionally about some things he'll do where people see that he's lost track a little bit, but people are still paying their money to go with him and to hear what he has to say. And I love the idea that at 73, having told people that he's got this diagnosis of Alzheimer's, like he's still able to be loved and valued, and people still want to know. It's not just, John Cooper Clarke's really excellent, I'm going to keep listening to him. It's that he brings something so wonderful that people will still go and see him. And he used to perform with rock bands and all sorts. He's had this really quite amazing career so far, and I don't think any of it's faded as he's got into his older age and as he gets some signs of illness. And I like that. I like that everybody is so valuable in our churches, that even the figures of Alzheimer's might keep them as sort of really valuable in our church. And I think that's something that resonates for me a bit about him as well. I'm so annoyed that I've picked two celebrities because I so don't like celebrity in church, but there are really particular things about those two people and the things they're doing or have done that sing for me.
There's something about the two that you've picked, Becki, that although they're celebrities, they're also really grounded, aren't they?
That's true.
And I think none of this in the Naked Chapel would want to kind of endorse just celebrities for the sake of being celebrities or going, oh, look who we've got at our church. It's about those kind of, what sort of properties do they bring? What kind of, and I think actually that kind of the role of a poet, just like the role of a singer, is quite profound. And each one of these people have kind of unique gifts to bring and ways in which they deliver. And so I'm more than happy to have other times we meet to have other poets and musicians and otherwise, not just for the sake of them being celebrity, but for maybe just the twist, the individual kind of glance on the world that they bring. And I think that's going to be quite uplifting, challenging, or somewhere in between. So thank you for that. Is there anything else to add about John Cooper Clarke? Anybody at home? Well, let's hear for grounded, passionate folk. So that's the fourth time mentioned about the passionate word. I think there is just something there about being passionate, being unbridled, just going for it. So maybe that's our challenge for this time, just to go for it, to be poetic, to be to enjoy the music that wider society brings, and that could maybe speak into our church context. I think it is time to end, but thank you, folks. Thank you, Becki. Thank you, Rach. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Elliot, for joining us. Thank you for your contributions. I look forward to seeing you again sometime. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Our next Naked Chapel will be the 6th of June, and I'm going to say goodbye to these people now. Would you like to wave before you go?
Thank you for having us.
Bye. It's just like on Zoom. It's like everyone's going to disappear. But yeah, thank you, folks. Thank you for tuning in this month, and I look forward to seeing you again. If you want to keep up to date with next episodes or just get reminders, then either like the Cybersten page on Facebook or subscribe to the Cybersten channel on YouTube as well. But thank you for being with us and for being part of this project. And see you next time.